Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm going to do today is that I'm going to discuss and show how skill development in Industry 4.0 is going to help. And also at the same time, instead of presenting a lot on the theory part, I'm going to actually show how AR and VR can actually transform the industry. And before starting on, I would like to briefly capture the 9 different pillars that is uh, in the Industry 4.0. You have first of all, you have the sensor and IoT. Then you have the data analytics, followed by the AI, automation, wireless, cloud computing, cybersecurity, the 3D printing, and last but not least is the augmented reality and virtual reality. If you look at all the different pillars that supporting Industry 4.0, it is only the augmented reality and virtual reality talks about the human being. I'm going to illustrate that in the next slide. But then according to Gartner, by 2020, almost 50% of the 50,000 largest business globally would have piloted or at least experienced what is immersive technology. If you look at this diagram, of course, there are 9 different pillars and we don't need to try to remember all the pillars, but essentially Industry 4.0 is talking about collaboration, connectivity in a very secure way. If you look at the physical asset, early on we look at the different supporting pillars. The sensors and IoT, including the 3D printing, is actually belonging to this particular area of physical assets or the machines. Then the wireless technology, cloud computing, and cybersecurity, we are talking about a system, but of course it's linked to the practices as well. Data analytics, IA, and automation is the practices which should be empowered by the system itself. And the people part deals with the augmented reality as well as the virtual reality. When you actually look at skill development, basically we talk about skill gap. We talk about people who actually retired early or people who actually multitasking within the industry itself. You take a look at this particular presentation analytics. It actually shows that operation error, of course, there are different kinds of industry. I just take one typical example in the oil and gas industry. 26% of all accidents were due to operational error. That means people who don't know how to operate, people who don't understand, or people who has got a lack of understanding in operation. So 26% of it. In terms of mechanical failure itself, 38%. But then people actually went to encrypt the different percentage within the mechanical failure. And they find that a large percentage of this is actually due to people who are subjecting the mechanical devices or the unit operation into an operational mode that is beyond their capability, right? Such that the machines actually breaks down very early. So in total, a lot of these typical accidents that is happening in the oil and gas industry is due to human error itself. And what exactly Industry 4.0 in terms of augmented reality and virtual reality emphasizes on is something that all of you are familiar with, is the learning pyramid. If you look at the bottom of the learning pyramid itself, high retention of knowledge is acquired through practices by doing, hands-on practice, do, teach, and watch. All right. So the retention percentage for AR and VR is around 75 to 90%. Before actually I show you how this can be done, I just wanted to show you the elements of the simulated practices within Yokogawa itself. If you look at the column on the left-hand side, the sequence, the stimulus, the trainer's role, learner's role, environment, as well as assessment. The sequence that we take through most of the projects that we do, all right, even for the client or do it internally, we actually look at observation, training, as well as testing, in order to impact a very rapid learning pedagogy outcome. Right? For the stimulus part, I wanted to emphasize this is that this is something that many people do in terms of skill coaching. I do, you see, and I guide, you do. And the last stage is that you do, I comment. So what I'm going to show you in the next slide is that how we're going to realize that in terms of virtual reality. All right. In terms of the trainer's role, you'll be able to see an avatar actually doing the role. That means you watch the avatar doing the role itself. Next is that the avatar will disappear. Then you have to do the so-called the operation by yourself, but with voice and guidance from someone. And finally, you'll be able to take a test. And the feedback, the trainer is going to give a feedback, or the supervisor is going to do the feedback. So let's move on. The first part, observation. Actually, what I've done is that I put on an Oculus, the head-mounted device, and actually so-called tape a video. Of course, when I put on the Oculus, it's 3D, but what you're going to see is actually just 2D video, right? So observation mode is exactly what I wanted to say is that I do, you see. Over here, everybody's job within manufacturing area or production area is connected. Before somebody actually move on to execute certain jobs, he needs to do a communication, right? And I'm going to show you just a 3-step in a palm switching model, right? 3 steps. First, he went, after communicating, he went on to turn on certain valve, right? And upon completing that, he went to a local panel and actually power it on. Then upon powering it on, he went to the next stage to open a certain valve. And all these are actually guided, all right? In this particular demo, actually, you can actually hear voice to guide you. And what if condition will actually comes around is that while you are operating this, if there's a fire or if there's a disturbance, what exactly you're going to do? For this case, the disturbance is actually a fire that's happening. And he has to look at what are the causes of the fire. And he actually used the right type of extinguisher to extinguish the fire. So in the observation mode of I do, you see, actually there is a voice, the audio voice. When you put on the Oculus, there's an audio voice that guides the person and tell him why is he doing this, okay? What he's supposed to do and why he's doing that. So first stage is that I'm going to put on a head-mounted device and I'm going to watch an avatar doing. And that avatar is actually the trainer itself. You can watch many times. Over here, we only talk about 3-step processes, but actually in that palm switching, it is more than 30 over steps. But I'm just capturing 3 steps for you to actually appreciate the situation. Next step is that upon completing this, he goes to a training mode. Let's look at the training mode itself. When you actually go into training mode, the important point is that there is still audio, there's still guidance from the audio. Actually suggests that when you get into this particular operation itself, standard operation instructions, first of all, you have to understand where you are standing, right? And you have to look around the surrounding, right, to find your exact location. Even if you have not been to the plant, when you use this, you are able to benchmark exactly where you are. Next is that you must understand what kind of tools that are available for you to use for this operation. And over here, you will see a gold sand that's coming out. You remember the 3-step process? Now, the gold sand actually tell you this is the first step you're going to do, all right? I simplified it by using one hand to show you, otherwise it's going to be red. Next step is that gold sand say you press this button, and finally they say that the third step involves opening of a valve. Therefore, for this particular portion is that the trainee himself actually does the work with guidance from the trainer itself. So this is the second part of it. I guide you to this training mode. Third part of it is that upon finishing the observation, the training, he actually goes on to a testing mode. This is a testing mode. No guidance, no voice, and nothing. He has to do the entire process by himself, right? And you'll notice that we actually use some of the gamification methodology to actually transport him from one place to the next place. All right, if you look at that, he move on to the next place, and you got to switch on this, and third is going to turn on the other valve. Let's say if you were to move on to a different place, then there'll be extra time incurred because each of them, the distance is being calculated. The time taken is also calculated. Now coming to the test of the so-called learning audit, it's divided into, if you go to the site, what kind of PPE equipment that you supposed to put on, whether you have actually adhered to the time, the KPI that is set for this, and do you understand the layout and equipment and the sequence that you're supposed to do this work, right? So the results are available in terms of Excel sheet, all right, or it can be stored in the cloud. In this case, it's displayed in terms of graphical form. If you take a look at the top part, the white color is PPE. You understand after the first test, second test, you actually understand what to wear to go out, what to put on to go out to the field. If you look at the purple line, it is actually capturing the so-called the amount of time that you need to handle the entire operation itself, the standard operation instruction. You notice that the timing improved upon each of the tests. The third item is that when you actually go out to the field, you must be familiar with the location of the equipment. And finally, it is about the SOP sequence. Sometimes when you execute the wrong sequence, then the entire process may fail you. And finally, it's the overall score. So this is the last part, that is you do, I command. That means these are actually tracked and recorded, and it can be shared with the trainee itself. Once a trainee, even when he does his test by himself during his free time, the results will be stored in the cloud, and the supervisor can get the results as soon as he finished the test itself. So with this, I hope that I have given you some good idea on how Industry 4.0 AR and VR actually can help operator, engineers, production workers, right, to actually practice on the skills in a way that it cannot be achieved without Industry 4.0. And with that, I finished the presentation. Thank you so much. Thank